Welcome to another episode of the Thunderstock Show, a collection of valuable brainstorms to enhance your life, liberty, and pursuit of property. Today, special guest, Carl Lefever, owner, CEO of Improve and Grow. Carl, thanks for joining me on the podcast.
You bet. Thanks for having me.
It's been a while since we last chatted. I'm glad to be here in the flesh, talking to you and seeing how things are going. I believe we first met in the late 2010s, 2019, and a lot has gone on, and I think it's all been good stuff. So my first question for you is, how did you get to the point where you decided, it's time for Improve and Grow to exist?
Okay.
What was it like? What did you do before you started Improve and Grow, and how did you know it was time?
Sure. So the story would be, my whole family was in the printing industry. I started working at a printing company that my family worked at when I was still in high school, and I really had no vision, no nothing. And I went to college when I graduated, but dropped out pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Was more interested in just having fun, and just worked hard, but really had no direction. And then in a very short amount of time, I found my faith. I married my wife and got offered a position in a brand new plant. Even though I didn't really have any direction, I worked in lots of areas, and so I got put into a leadership position. As part of that, they put me into a training program to be something called a Lean Six Sigma Black Belt, which basically, in short, I ran around the country leading teams, figuring out how to help make processes better, starting out at a plant, then moving into departments, then business units, and then whole companies. And I did that for 15, 20 years. And I learned through that process that God has wired me to help companies grow. That's just what I do. But I also am very passionate about getting a result and get very focused. And I got to a point where I was very burnt out. I was spending 75% of the time on the road. Didn't have very healthy life habits. By that point, we had 3 kids at home.
Oh, okay.
And a 4th on the way. And our youngest needed a lot more attention when she was born. She was born 2 months early. She had some, just needed a lot more attention. Yeah. And I realized I needed to be home. And I don't know how to say it. It sounds a little weird, but I felt very clearly God told me to lay down that job. I had no idea what I was going to do. My wife and I, that was around...
Let me ask you, so you went from having fun at college, not really, knowing why you're going there other than to have fun and enjoy life, and then you just jumped into faith, family, and Lean Six Sigma. There probably was a few things in between there. I kind of want to dive into that. That's a cool transformation.
I mean, I guess the short story would be, I got wrapped up in drugs and alcohol, and dealt with some abuse, substance abuse issues there. And that's through that process found my faith. I mean, I was raised as a Christian, so it wasn't that I maybe refound it, I guess is the way I would say it. But up until then, I really had no goals. I was just about having fun, pushing limits, and, kind of having my life reoriented and pursuing a higher purpose, and then also being married.
Yeah, realizing this path of self-indulgence and quote unquote having fun, the fun stops eventually.
Yeah. And
where's the purpose? You found all that. And did you meet your wife and get married at the same timeline as that whole was happening?
We were friends in high school. We dated a little bit out of high school, but with the lifestyle I was living, that didn't really mesh very well. But everything kind of came together very fast. We reconnected. She also found her faith separately, not unrelated, and we kind of connected on that. I think we were married within about 9 months of there.
That's awesome.
And started having kids pretty quickly after that, and then the whole career thing just kind of was unexpected, but that kind of happened around that same time too.
Man.
And then I looked up about 15, 20 years later and didn't really did a lot, made a lot of money, had a lot of experiences, learned a lot, but also realized was not really happy with the kind of father I'd become, wasn't really happy with the pace of work, and it wasn't the pace of work I actually really enjoyed.
You found your purpose again.
Yeah, exactly.
So you found your purpose in the start of it, and then you got to a certain point and you're like, hey, I'm called to do something else, and I think you just have to answer the call.
Yeah. Yeah, so starting Improve and Grow, that wasn't the next thing. You'd think that would be.
Okay.
But my wife and I went through a process a couple of months of just kind of really praying and talking to each other and dreaming. I mean, I think over a 1 week period, we considered starting a coffee shop, buying a PC business that was for sale locally around the time, and or joining a missions organization.
Wow.
Getting
Three very
involved
different
with
things in Improve and Grow.
And not yet. None of them were start a consulting company, but we went. Long story short, we both had a desire to at least dip our toes in what getting involved with missions work might look like. We joined up with an organization called Youth with a Mission. And we went through a 3-month training program. We took our whole family overseas to New Zealand,
cool.
where they had a program for families that were interested in missions. So we and it was like 12 other families, so there was like 20 plus adults and 60 some kids all going through this program together. Did that for 3 months, and then part of that program you do 2 months of outreach. Our family and a few other families went together to Australia and did inner city outreach, helping serve the homeless and do some other things there. And that was a transformative experience. I loved it. Great time as a family, great time helping people, and again, finding some purpose. And I'm kind of impulsive, I hadn't put a lot of identity into work and wasn't happy with what that outcome was. For a 6-month period of life, did nothing but try to serve a higher purpose, that kind of thing, and really enjoyed that, really enjoyed spending time with family. So my simple mind was like, this is what we're supposed to do the rest of our life. So we came home with the goal of going full-time into missions, putting our house up for sale, starting to pursue what would that look like. And ultimately, long story short, through that process, I realized, at least timing-wise, now was not the time for that.
Sure.
And so we decided to stay home. I had a friend hired me to help him at his company short-term. That turned into a semi-full-time job for a little while. And in that process, I realized I wasn't really cut out just to work for one business. I started taking jobs on the side just as a way to make some extra income and kind of feed that curiosity bug of wanting to do more than just one thing. And within about 6 months of that, it became so much of a distraction that I realized I needed to start a business. And that became Improve and Grow.
One of the pieces of advice that you hear people give other entrepreneurs is, if you have a dream, go all in and bet on yourself. And it's like, yes, you should definitely pursue dreams. Not arguing that.
Yeah.
But what I will argue is if you have 4 children and a wife and a mortgage, be patient and still do the thing that you need to do to take care of life. And while you work your tail off being the person you want to be, nothing wrong with giving yourself, I don't want to say safety net because it's not what that is, but giving yourself time to really let it develop and let time do its thing. I love that, you had the stick with itness to juggle both, because some people make the excuse of, I can't start my dream because I have a job. It's like, if you believe that, then you're right. I'm not going to argue.
Yeah, I'm not often sought for advice about how to start a business. I've only started one, but every once in a while, I give advice to some people who ask for it.
You've only started one?
Uh-huh.
And how long have you been with Improve and Grow?
11 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's statistically, I don't want to say an anomaly because other people have done it, but it's impressive because I've definitely, speaking from my own behalf, started more than one.
Yeah. And
that's pretty crazy. I think the average business is like 80% of businesses close their doors within 5 years or something like that.
Yep, it's a pretty high number. But my biggest piece of advice to somebody starting out is put yourself in a situation where you can do what you're trying to do, where you can test out what you're trying to do for at least a while before your income is wholly dependent upon success in that endeavor, because you learn a lot. I mean, I didn't really figure out what I wanted Improve and Grow to be or look like. I mean, if I figured it out now, I would say it started to come into focus about 3 years in. I mean, honestly, for the first 3 years, it was just me and some contractors, and I was really reluctant to hire employees or set down roots because I was convinced, who knows what I'm going to do. I wasn't really. It was more like, we'll just see where this goes. But after 3 years, I realized, okay, I need to start putting some bones on this thing. And then that also forced me through a process of kind of, well, what is it we're going to do?
Okay, so the 3 year mark, What led you to that decision? I want to kind of dig deeper into that, where you were working with contractors and you want to keep your options open, so to speak. What was the catalyst to say, I need to hire my first person?
Pain.
Yeah.
No, more like, and the exact timing.
That's real though.
Yeah, the exact timing might be off, but I mean, my background was Lean Six Sigma.
Yeah.
So
organizations.
It was only natural for me to do Lean Six Sigma consulting.
Mm.
That was one hat I was wearing. I was also doing online webinars, like paid webinars, teaching other people to do Lean Six Sigma. I kind of landed in that role through a past colleague.
Yeah.
And then the job that I had taken for a short period of time, I learned how to do Google Ads there. And it was something completely different, but I could use my Lean Six Sigma skills to do that. And I started getting consulting gigs doing that. So I was doing PPC for some businesses. I was doing Lean Six Sigma consulting for some businesses. And then I was doing paid gigs, doing webinars on certain topics. And all of those things became somewhat fruitful, but they were all taking me in different directions.
Sure. Four different verticals.
And I was like, I don't want to do that. And when I sat down and kind of went through a process of picking what do I really enjoy the most, it was actually the paid ads. It was digital marketing, and it was something new, exciting, something I could learn about, something I could do from home, and something I felt like could really take me the next 10 years. Where it was Lean Six Sigma, even though I could do it and I used to love it, it just felt over for me, so I didn't really enjoy doing it. So that was about 2 years in, I just made the decision to stop doing any Lean Six Sigma consulting and only do the paid ad stuff. And then I started learning about SEO, started learning about websites, and around that time realized if I really want to invest in keeping this company, I'm going to be a lot better having a small team, at least a small team that I can work with. I mean, contractors is a great way to scale up and not have a lot of overhead, but if you want to brainstorm about what the future of this company should be, or should we do it this way or that way, you can burn a lot of money paying contractors for non-customer, non-billable work. And I just realized I need other people who are committed, wholly to what we're trying to build. And so it went pretty quickly from there. We hired our first 2 employees, signed an office lease, and then over the years we've grown.
Are you still in office, or do you work remote, or how does that look like today?
We're fully in office. I mean, we went fully remote over COVID, but just the makeup of myself and my team, we all really enjoy working together. We enjoy being in the office. We also enjoy the flexibility of working from home when we can. So we describe ourselves, it's a hybrid shop. Sure. But it's not that, some people, what hybrid is they've got a mostly remote team and then they have a few people in the office. Mm-hmm. Everyone on our team spends at least 3 days in the office, 2 days at home. Yeah.
So I want to drill down on something you mentioned about that growth stage, going from a few contractors to, you said at most you had 11 employees or 13 employees?
Yeah, at one point in Peru, I had 13 employees.
13 employees. So selfishly, I want to ask this line of questioning because I'm in a similar place. I'm starting, so I started my business in 2022, like Q4. So we're going on I'm starting year 3. Mm-hmm. And I made my first hire for a full-time employee. Mm-hmm. And I'm seeing some of these corollaries. So I kind of want to ask somebody who's been through the growth stage. What did you need your first 1 or 2 hires? Like, what did they need to do? Because I'm looking in a mirror when I'm hearing you talk about 1, pain, 2, non-billable work, stuff that needs to get done that's super important, but you can't charge a client for it. Contractors are great. If you have a billable project, they'll do it for the scope and the rate. Yeah. You'll make an agreement, and then the money for your business is set, and it is what it is. But I found that for all the things that are not in the scope, that's the client still needs to be successful. I need help with that too. Yeah. So what are some of the things that your first hires you needed their help with?
Yeah, I think there's different lines of thought for that. Like I've met some entrepreneurial people whose whole goal is just, they're always trying to replace themselves, and focus on running the business, not being in it. I admittedly enjoy being in it, but I enjoy discovering and building new things. So like the first year or so was, after I stopped doing consulting, was just helping clients with PPC. If they needed other digital marketing services, I was contracting that out to other companies or introducing them to other companies. But as I did that, I realized, hey, there's this SEO thing. I feel like I understand it better than the vendors I'm hiring to help me with it, but I need the same kind of time I had to learn PPC to learn that. So my first hire was actually replacing myself on the PPC side, so that I could focus on learning SEO. And my second hire was a different kind of hire. It was, I realized we needed to be able to build, for our SEO and PPC efforts to work well, for the traffic we're building for our clients to actually make money for them, it had to convert to customers. And having a good, strong, well-converting website was really important for that. And I did not know how to build websites. I worked with a couple contractors who could build websites, but their focus was building websites. It wasn't on growing businesses. And I needed to find someone who could build websites who also cared about growing businesses. And so that was hire number 2, was finding someone who knew how to build websites, but was also cared more about the effect those websites were going to have, because that wasn't something I knew how to do. I knew how to care about business, but I didn't know how to build the website. So that became that kind of core team. And then we just kept growing from there. So eventually I hired an SEO to do full-time SEO. And, my MO has been learn something, systematize it, turn it over to someone else, learn something, systematize it, turn it over to someone else.
I think the hardest part for people that don't have black belts in Lean Six Sigma, jokes aside, is not the learning something, not the turning it over to somebody else thing. It's systematizing it. So how do you approach systematizing marketing, which is different than, say, manufacturing or other process-oriented things? Obviously, marketing has a process to it. But what is your experience with Lean Six Sigma? How does that help guide you with systemizing marketing processes?
Yeah, one of the core philosophies of Lean Six Sigma is everything is a process. Anything you do is a process, and it has an end result, and that end result is either good or bad, and usually you want it to be good. So if you want the end result to get better, you have to fix the process. And step 1 of fixing a process is defining the process. So, I don't know, it's just become secondhand to me to kind of visualize the way things are being done through steps. And so, and then to begin to describe, what is the main steps, the 3 to 5 steps that take something from being nothing to something, and then each of those steps have names. Now, how does step 1 work? How does step 2 work? How does step 3 work? And I guess, again, I didn't grow up this way. It wasn't like I was born thinking about process, but it's just something I kind of naturally do, is think about, well, how do you get from point A to point C, and what does good look like? And then the other key principle of Lean Six Sigma is Y equals F of X. In other words, the outcome you want is a function of the process and its inputs. So if we want to make something better, we've got to focus on what do we improve about the way things are happening. You can't just wish something to be better. So anyway, that fundamental lens is the way I look at everything I do. And so it makes me, because I did that for 15 to 20 years, I feel uncomfortable if a process isn't understood, if a process isn't described, if there isn't at least some guardrails. I would not consider myself a creative, but I do think people who are overly logical can get too focused on standards and everybody has to do everything the same way. One of the things I learned from one of my mentors in Lean Six Sigma is the key to actually finding improvement opportunities is variation.
Interesting.
If everybody did everything exactly the same way, you wouldn't actually be able to tell how to make it better. The only way you can figure out how to make something better is to try something different. And so...
Hence your first hire.
Yeah. And so, I like to think one of the reasons we can be successful in an area like marketing, which often is described more as an art than a science, is we are trying to systematize the things that can be systematized in order to free up our team to think creatively about how to get to the result. So I only need to learn how to set up a Google Ads account a few times till we can make a process out of it. And then by making a process out of it, we can then instead of having to remember how to do that every time we go to do that, by making it a process, that frees whoever that person up is to think more about the end result, which is to get a customer good leads.
Yeah, the end result matters so much, which is improving and growing a customer's business.
Yeah.
But you, by starting with the inputs in, it's so much easier to ensure the likelihood of success when you know, hey, if steps 1 through 20 obtain, then we either there's an issue with the process. It comes down to that.
Yep.
So either we're not executing on the steps or we're missing steps that need to be added.
And that's another fundamental, the father of statistical process control, his name's Edward Deming, and he has lots of famous quotes, but the one that I remember the most is 95% of your problems are the process, not the people.
That's beautiful.
And
I want to clip that.
Yeah.
Chat clip that, whoever's editing it.
So I grew up in organizations where the assumption, if something went wrong, the assumption was always someone's at fault. And I really glommed onto that idea that 95% of the problem is the process, not the people. Now, I will admit, as a leader, sometimes I don't go to people enough. I just focus on the process side and kind of forget about the people side sometimes. But that has really helped me, because when something goes wrong at Improve and Grow, the question isn't who did it and who needs to pay for that, meaning be punished for that or have some,
Sure.
The question is, well, what happened? Why did it happen? Like, what went wrong?
So you approach coaching and leadership opportunities the same way as if there was a OSHA violation in a manufacturing plant, knowing the 6 whys, like why did this forklift run into the rack?
Yep.
Same thing with marketing. They're just less, obviously we're not putting our lives at stake necessarily.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, if the root cause is Johnny drank 6 beers before he jumped on the hoist truck, okay, you got to deal with that. But usually that's not what's happening. Usually there's an issue with signage or lighting or procedures, etc.
Yeah.
And dealing with whatever Johnny did just solves his problem. It doesn't solve the other 10 people that have to drive the hoist truck. So yeah, we try to approach it as deal with whatever that problem is, but also consider, is this something that could happen again? If so, what can we change to prevent it or eliminate it from ever happening again?
And so every time something produces an outcome that's not the desirable outcome, you're like, hooray, we can make the outcome better next time because we can go have the opportunity to fix the process.
Doesn't always sound like hooray, but yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
Man, so you mentioned that the original trifecta of services went from, I'm sure you didn't intend to start 3 different businesses when you started your business, but you had 3 different sort of like verticals that didn't mesh 100% integration with one another.
Yep.
And then within 3 years, you did have 3 verticals or service offerings that did mesh with one another. How has that core offering evolved and grown? And what other service offerings? How else do you serve clients today?
Yeah, I mean, our core, we in a sentence, we describe it as inbound lead generation. Mm-hmm. So we're trying to take business owners and their teams out of the process of having to go knock on doors and find people to work with. There's people out there who already need their services. If you can connect with those people, that's a lot smoother sales process.
Sure.
And so PPC or paid ads on Google and SEO organic approach, we focus on those 2 ways because they focus on people who are searching. That's one of the main ways that we get in front of people who are raising their hand and saying, I have a need for a service. And then we're taking them to a company that provides that service. So that is the core of what we do. But over time, we learned to build websites. We learned to write content. We've dabbled in things like marketing automation and email marketing and social media marketing. But something in the last year or 2, we've realized as we've added some of those other things, often they were added in response to 1 or 2 clients' desires or maybe a team member's desire to try something different. And at its core, most of our money and most of our results still come from 2 or 3 main things. In fact, it goes back to Lean Six Sigma. There's another principle, it's the Pareto principle. 80% of your problems are driven by 20% of the causes or a smaller number of things, if you just want to make that a simple principle. And in that way, we stepped back and realized a couple years ago that of all the different services and packages and all that stuff, there were a few key things that were really driving results for our clients. And we made the hard but conscious choice to narrow back down to really just search marketing for our clients.
So inbound and search marketing, do you have specific clients, industries that
Yeah.
You target more than others?
So as of this year, we do.
Yeah.
Up until about 3 years ago, so about 7-8 years in, I was starting to hear a lot of people saying you need to niche down. It wasn't that I'd never heard that before. Prior to that, people would say, what's your niche? And I would say it's everybody, because I actually didn't like the idea of working with the same kind of companies.
Sure.
But I realized that was selfish of me. I enjoyed the variety.
Sure.
Not everyone wants to wake up every day and do something different. And I realized over the years that I don't even necessarily want to always wake up and do something different every day. And so we've been exploring what industries or verticals or what solution we want to focus on. And I feel like we finally have arrived on that. I mean, I will say it's pretty clear 95% of our clients for all of time have been local service providers,
sure.
people that offer some sort of service to a local geography. But this year we made the conscious decision to focus just on contractors, people who provide construction, building, remodeling, or some other type of construction type service. And it wasn't because we're particularly knowledgeable or have a personal love necessarily, sure. But when we looked at our 10-year history with clients, we had like a 95% success rate.
Sure, why not bet on that?
With that industry. And we had tried some other industries that had, like right before COVID, we had a small group of clients that were in the travel tourism area.
Mm-hmm.
We started focusing on that industry, and then COVID hit, and we lost 35% of our business overnight.
You can't make a market. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Oof.
Now, a lot of those customers came back, but we realized in that process we have to be careful about narrowing down to an industry that could be that sensitive to things that are outside of our control. And we've, long story short,
you'll still help them, but
yeah,
they're not like, if you had to choose a niche, that's not the one.
Yeah, another piece of advice I've gotten, with this whole idea of niching, I mean, like hyper niching would be we offer one service to one very specific
law firms,
or not even to law firms, like immigration attorneys. All we do
sure.
is Facebook ads for immigration attorneys.
Sure.
Like that's super niched, right? We don't go quite that far, but we do realize there's wisdom in concentration, particularly when you're trying to grow. I mean, for 10 years, every customer that came in was word of mouth. I think in that first 10-year history, we had one client that came through our own marketing efforts.
Wow.
Literally every other client, and we've worked with over 100 now, but at the time, about 100 businesses.
So 99 clients from referrals?
Yep. But in the last 2 years, we've made a conscious decision. We wanted to grow. We wanted to be in control of our growth. The referrals are great. They're easy to close, but they're also super unpredictable. So as we started to invest in our own lead gen, I began to realize we had to focus. Mm-hmm. But the advice I mentioned was there can be wisdom in focusing on just one industry, but the advice was find 2 industries you work really well with and that are complementary to each other. Find a third that's counter to those 2. And kind of build your business around that. And we didn't have to go find those. We have a base in travel tourism.
Yep. We
have a base in construction. Mm-hmm. And we have a base in professional services. So like bookkeepers, lawyers, attorneys, that kind of thing. So, but we made a conscious decision to pick and focus on one of those and really grow it. And that's the contractor side. Yeah. So now for the last year and a half or so, I think it's literally 100% of our new client. We've had record new client acquisition, but
sure,
almost 100% of those have been contractors. And I think we've added 18 clients in the last year or
That's
so.
Awesome.
And 1 out of those 18 is not a contractor. And 1 out of those 18 has come from referral. The other about 15 out of the 18 all came through our lead gen efforts. So.
Yeah.
So niching down for us has helped, one, with lead gen, because when you specialize in an industry, it's a lot easier to convince a stranger that you can help them if you've got experience in their industry, because you don't have that warm referral that's kind of helping grease the skids with that.
I will say one of the most hilarious conversations I have when I do marketing and consulting for people is a company might have been around for 15 years. Like, we have no idea who our niche is.
Yeah.
And I'm like, who did you help in the past?
Yep.
You literally look at like, what is the actual empirical evidence? You've been in business for 15 years.
Yep.
Do you have some clients you helped better than others? What are the numbers? Like, let's dig into that. But for people that haven't been in business for 10 years, that don't have that list of clients they've helped, what are some ways that they can look at niching down in your eyes, or figuring it out?
Yeah.
Rather, maybe what's a process for figuring out your niche? That might be the better question.
I mean, being kind of an analyst, my Lean Six Sigma background, I do, it was really helpful to have 10 years of data to look at to make that decision. But I think there's 3 or 4 questions I've always been told you need to ask. One is, what's your passion? Who do you actually enjoy working with? Because that'll fuel you when things get tough.
Yeah.
2, who do you have a track record of success for? Even if it's only 1, 2, or 3,
Sure.
And the third is making sure there's actually enough of those people available. There's a big enough market. And then the last one that I recall is that they have the money to spend. And so we looked at a couple of different industries, and some of the mistakes we made in some of the other niches we tried, we missed 1 or 2 of those questions. So that combination of 4, I think, kind of really points you in the right direction. So, for us, we had the advantage of empirical data to look at.
Yeah.
I would say if you're just trying to pick, some of those you might have to guess at, but if it were me, I would have to invest the time and energy I wouldn't be able to know the track record, but I would at least be able to see how many of those kind of companies are out there, how big are they, what do they typically invest on marketing, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. No, I mean, I love the systematic approach. I mean, you mentioned earlier, this is such an interesting topic to discuss next, that marketing is typically looked at as like a right-brained or creative or artistic pursuit. And then if you don't back that with science and analytical logic, sometimes you just make some pretty, what people think are neat looking or pretty looking collateral, but if it doesn't convert and grow your business, then what was the inherent value? So how do you measure and weigh the left and right brains of marketing between the analytical and then the creative? Like what's your approach on that?
Yeah, I mean, we have not figured out how to measure the creative side of it, but measuring, one of the things I love about digital marketing with my background in Lean Six Sigma, it's all about measuring, improving a result, and proving its bottom line value. And I find that relatively easy to do in digital marketing, at least easier than other places. So
I would say more than print.
Yeah, so we're setting up, we're using tools like Google Analytics and conversion tracking as a way to measure the leading indicators of traffic and conversions. And then in the last couple of years, we've really invested quite a bit in helping our clients either make sure they have a CRM and are leveraging that, or if they don't, we're providing a CRM for them so that, we're not as in control. We're not sales consultants. We're not qualifying and closing leads for them, nor are we advising them on how to do that, but we have stepped into the area of providing a solution for them that will help facilitate doing that because we need feedback. Like, we can make changes on our end that are going to improve lead quality or improve the size of a job that you're closing or improve the type of customers you're getting in front of, as long as we can get the feedback on what's working, what's not. And that, I would say, that's how, like, I wouldn't be as audacious to say we've measured the effectiveness of creative, but we absolutely use like heat mapping tools and conversion rates and traffic growth, year-on-year traffic growth as indicators. So if we introduce a new website and traffic plummets or conversions grow, those are high indicators, based on the timing of what contributed to that. Or if we've introduced a new piece of content and now that's, it's relatively easy to see how that's contributed to the results.
Yeah, it's not I need this website to pop more. I've heard that from clients before. Can you just make it pop? I just don't feel like it. No, I mean, I make that agency joke just to say that one of my favorite responses to these requests of how we enhance creative is, well, let's put it out in the market and see what the market thinks. Yeah. Because a priori or before the fact, I can only give you my best bet, and guess what? Ever since I got married, I don't even buy my own clothing off the top. I don't know my style, let alone what your target market will, but I know how to look for it. And I also think that surrounding myself and having people in the network that have a bit more experience or taste for it, it's like filling in the gaps of, hiring for PPC so you can learn SEO, and hiring for SEO so you can learn the next thing. Yeah. Super important. Well, another question I have for you, Carl, is where do you see the future of inbound and digital marketing going with all these enhancements with technology?
I definitely don't have a crystal ball. I would say there will always be people who have a need they need to fill, and they don't know who to trust to fill it with.
Yeah.
And so there were, in my world, because I'm pretty narrowly focused on search marketing, there will always be market for search marketing, but the tools or mechanisms we use to get in front of those people and help those people might look different.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting to see that changing.
I love how you mentioned search marketing, not in Google or not SEO or not PPC particularly. You're like, no, inbound, and these are the tools we use. These are the inputs of the process to get the result of the inbound lead, and not people being like, oh, we're the best at Google, but we don't really do this, you know?
Yeah, it's funny. I'll even step back more and say, like, improve and grow. One, the company is all about helping other companies find growth, and to do that by improving what they're doing, right? So we didn't even start out as a digital marketing firm; it just became that. And I will sometimes tell people, like when we're hiring and things like that, like, I know that I'm wired to help companies grow. That's why the name of the company is Improve and Grow. That's just what we do. But frankly, I don't know if we'll always do that through the same tools that we do now. I know we'll always be helping companies grow, but we will adapt. The end result is what we're after, which is the growth. That's what companies hire us to get them to do. Digital marketing for us is, and even search marketing, is just a means to that end. I don't see an end in sight for that right now, but to your point, it's not about Google necessarily, although that gets a lot of priority from us. It's how to get in front of the right people who need the service.
All right, I'm going to go switch gears instead of just strictly business and tactical.
Yeah.
How would you say you've grown as a person and improved as a person since you've found your faith as like a milestone marker? Like, how have you improved and grown in your spiritual side, your religious faith side?
Yeah. I mean, in a word, or in a sentence, it's finding purpose. When things get hard, or when I realize I need to make changes, my faith, I have someone to pray to ask for help. I have a book to read to guide me. I do believe there's right and wrong. There's clear right and wrong. There are clear rules to live by, and those can be really helpful. I mean, there's a lot of gray in life.
Sure.
Honest, and there's a
like
lot of
beard.
There's a lot of unpredictability. So having boundaries to lean on is actually super helpful. And so, but I would say just finding purpose, a reason to live beyond just having fun, keeps me going. Yeah.
So it's interesting though that, I don't want to make this all about Lean Six Sigma, but it almost feels like you found a way to approach life problems. Like there's, systems and processes and guidelines and heuristics and not rules per se, but kind of through your faith that probably really help to increase the likelihood that your output will be what you want it to be at the end of the day, which is I would have to guess this for you, but to improve and grow your community and the clients you serve, and it seems like that should be at least mentioned. Because a lot of people, when I meet with other entrepreneurs, very seldom do the ones that I want to have on my podcast studio have the goal of just making more money for the sake of making more money.
Yep.
Like the love of money to me is just like, I've met plenty of people with plenty of money that were not happy people, or people that I want to hang around with. So what do you think? How would you phrase your goal through at the end of the day when you get to be, let's say you're 65, maybe you're 70, ready to retire. What are some of the conditions or things that you'll say, okay, my work here is so I'm ready to retire. Whatever that may be.
Yeah, I don't know necessarily. Like, I don't really envision retiring so much as maybe having the freedom to help who I want to help when I want to help them, as opposed to right now, while finances is not my only goal or even necessarily my main goal, it's still a pretty daily focus.
Yeah.
There's a certain number of people we need to help in order to feed my family, to feed the other 7 or 8 families we have at Improve and Grow, and to keep moving towards the goals that we have there. So yeah, when I think about retirement, I think about less, when can I stop doing what I'm doing now and do something different or relax, and more, I look forward to a time when I have more freedom to
learn SEO. Like
Yeah,
like 10 years ago.
invest time and energy in helping grow organizations that maybe can't afford my help, or maybe where I don't need the money. It's more about the impact we're having, those kind of things. So I look forward to that. And I don't think I need to wait till I'm 60 or 70 to get there, but spending more time that I also do get excited about. And again, this isn't something I have to wait till I'm 60 or 70 to do, but just doing more life with Amy, my wife, and my kids, and just having the freedom to do some more things we want to do.
Yeah. Now, if you could go back to when you were in grade school, pre-college, like let's say even pre-first job, and you could go back and not tell a lesson, but have some words with that version of Carl. How would that conversation go?
I know what I'd want to say. The question is, would I listen? I don't know. I would say...
Or what would you ask that person?
Yeah. I don't know if I know what I'd ask, but I would definitely try to advise myself to focus more on people and more on the moment. Like, I think if we think about it, a lot of us live most of our life in the future.
Yeah.
We're living for something we want to do. Some of us have big goals we're going for. Some of us just have, whatever those goals are, we're living in a future moment or living for a future moment, and we miss a lot of what's happening right now. And that, for me, if I could have learned that discipline or habit a lot earlier, and I'm not saying I've learned it now, but I feel like...
You've attempted to learn it.
Yeah. I feel like being present and caring more about the people you're with and what's going on with them, I just don't know how you could go wrong like that.
Yeah. I mean, the future state is just a composite of the now.
Yeah. I mean, I think we have to, I don't know that I could live without working towards something. So there is some degree of living for the future that I think makes sense and is right and appropriate. Yeah. But when you become so focused on, if I do all these things, this, life will be great when this happens, you miss a lot of really good...
Conditional happiness.
Yeah, you miss a lot of really good life that's happening right now if you're only working towards the great life you hope you have someday.
Yeah. No, I love that. It also comes back to the sentiment you shared earlier, where it's the balance between sacrificing your now for your future and sacrificing your future for your now.
Yeah.
And it's balancing that. Because you had different stages where, you said 15 years later I woke up and I was doing the thing, building the future, and then the future came and I'm like, this isn't it. Yep. And then before that you're like, I was living in the now and that wasn't it. So it's really balancing both. It's like balancing both of those dichotomies.
Yep.
I think in business, to tie back to that, it's so important for people, from an investing standpoint, because I don't have the Six Sigma background. I do have some experience in private equity, where you work with finance and accounting people so much as a marketer. At first, it was like, oh, this is so painful. You guys are all worried about these spreadsheet math and models, and then you kind of get it when you spend enough time with them. And you're like, oh, well, if we want to get to the future state and we're tracking the past, we better make these decisions now.
Yeah. I do think, a business principle that has helped me in life is setting longer range goals and then breaking those down into yearly goals, quarterly goals, and even weekly goals sometimes, and just working towards them. What life has taught me is things aren't always going to go the way you expect them to, and you have to kind of hold that with an open hand. Yeah. So I kind of like to think I'm working towards a balance of both having goals and plans to reach those goals that actually make them possible, but also be ready to change your goals and or remake your plans when life happens and things go differently than you planned. And
a goal without a plan is simply a wish.
That's right.
Cool. Well, lots to think about. I could keep talking to you for way longer, but that'll be living in the moment only.
Yeah.
I will ask you one last question. It's not super deep and philosophical though, but for those that are searching for your help and your services, where can they find you?
Yeah, our website is improveandgrow.com, all spelled out. And me personally, I'm on LinkedIn, Carl Lefever. That's my handle. Those are the two main places you can find me.
Well, everyone, thank you so much. That concludes our conversation today on the Thunderstock Show. I hope that this brainstorm brought you some value in your pursuit of property, and your life and your liberty and all the good things in life out of it. If you enjoyed the show, my only ask, I don't want to ask, is share with a friend. It's the only way that we grow. So my only ask now is to have a great day and be well. Thank you so much.